Great ideas don't come from people like you. The words cut through the murmurs of the penthouse gathering, silencing conversations around the catering station. The young waiter froze, water pitcher suspended mid-pour, his face flushing red against the crisp white of his uniform shirt. Around him, champagne glasses clinked as if nothing had happened. The 87th floor penthouse gleamed with power, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Manhattan's skyline, crystal chandeliers reflecting off marble countertops, and the quiet hum of wealth permeating every corner. 23 of the world's most influential investors mingled, their combined net worth exceeding the GDP of small nations. The waiter, Michael, had been invisible to them all evening, until he'd made the mistake of commenting on a conversation about renewable energy innovations. Michael's knuckles whitened around the pitcher handle as laughter rippled through the nearby group. The investor who'd spoken, Harrison Wells, billionaire venture capitalist, adjusted his custom Brioni suit with manicured fingers, enjoying the audience his remark had gathered. What neither noticed was the tall figure who had paused by the window, a tumbler of whiskey halfway to his lips, his attention shifting from the city lights to the unfolding scene. Elon Musk set his drink down silently. Michael Harrington had spent 3 years serving Manhattan's elite while taking night classes in environmental engineering. At 24, he worked for elite catering to pay tuition, memorizing faces and preferences of those whose investment could one day change his life. Tonight's event, the annual Vertex Investment Summit, had been circled on his calendar for months. Not because the tips would be generous, though they would, but because it gathered the very people who could transform his carbon capture concept from notebook sketches to reality. "I just thought the discussion about atmospheric carbon extraction was interesting," Michael said, struggling to keep his voice steady as he set the pitcher down. "I've been researching a modified algae system that—" "Research?" Harrison's eyebrows lifted in theatrical surprise. He turned to the semicircle of attentive faces. "Our server has been researching." The emphasis dripped with condescension. "Tell me, what journal are you published in? Which university funds your work?" His questions were perfectly calculated darts, each landing precisely where intended. The small crowd's expressions ranged from amusement to second-hand embarrassment. All except one, though Michael was too focused on his suddenly tight collar to notice. Michael's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. The room seemed to shrink, the air thinning as phones emerged discreetly, capturing his humiliation for private amusement. Harrison Wells, whose clean energy fund had just acquired its third unicorn startup last quarter, was known for his cutting evaluations of pitch competitions. Tonight, he'd found unexpected entertainment. "I'm still in school, sir," Michael admitted, the words barely audible above the cocktail hour ambiance. "City College." "City College," Harrison repeated as if sampling an underwhelming wine. "Admirable, truly, but innovation, real innovation, isn't cobbled together between serving canapes." His cufflinks caught the light as he gestured dismissively. "Some domains require not just education but connections, resources, perspective. The kind that comes from," he gestured around the room, "certain environments." Several guests nodded appreciatively, comfortable in the knowledge that their position atop the financial ecosystem was justified by more than circumstance. A woman in a midnight blue dress laughed softly, whispering something to her companion. Near the bar, a server who knew Michael from other events looked away, pretending to polish already gleaming glasses. The hierarchy was being enforced, the natural order maintained. Michael's shoulders tensed beneath his uniform jacket. 3 years of professional courtesy warred with the burning indignity rising in his chest. He'd spent countless nights in the campus lab, refining his models while classmates partied. The prototype in his cramped apartment had consumed his savings, all for a moment of courage that was crumbling beneath Harrison's polished contempt. "Perhaps you should focus on what you're good at," Harrison continued, lifting his empty glass meaningfully. Another scotch. The Macallan 25, not the 18 they were pouring earlier. The circle of spectators had grown. A Wall Street Journal tech reporter lingered at its edge, mental notes forming. A venture capitalist from Singapore watched with clinical interest, assessing Harrison's influence over the room. The moment was crystallizing into exactly the type of anecdote shared later in private clubs. Remember that server who thought he was the next Elon Musk? Speaking of whom, Elon had been observing the exchange with increasing intensity, his posture shifting subtly from casual observer to coiled intervention. What caught his attention wasn't Harrison's predictable elitism, but something in the server's eyes, a familiar spark of determined intelligence he recognized all too well. As Michael reached for Harrison's glass, his face a mask of professional neutrality hiding wounded pride, Musk set his own drink down and began moving toward the group. "Actually," Michael said, his voice finding unexpected steadiness as he straightened instead of taking the glass, "the algae system uses a modified cyanobacteria strain that can capture carbon at nearly 3 times the efficiency of current commercial applications. The technical details flowed more confidently than his social interactions. It's the implementation method that's different. Instead of massive rural installations, it's designed for urban integration, using existing building infrastructures as—" "Fascinating," Harrison interrupted, not bothering to mask his boredom. "But I've literally heard 1,000 pitches from people with actual credentials. Do you have any idea how many MIT and Stanford PhDs can't get 5 minutes with me?" He turned to a gray-haired investor beside him. "Richard here sits on the board at Cornell. Should we get you a full scholarship?" The question sparked another wave of chuckles. Richard adjusted his glasses with practiced precision. "Harrison's being generous. These conferences attract dreamers like moths to flame. Last month, my housekeeper mentioned her cryptocurrency idea." He sighed dramatically. "Everyone wants to skip the ladder's lower rungs." The crowd's amusement surged again. Michael stood perfectly still, trapped between professional obligation and personal dignity. His hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness now, but from the restraint required to maintain composure. One of the event coordinators had noticed the situation, moving closer with a concerned expression that signaled Michael might soon be escorted away. "What buildings?" The question cut through the laughter, direct and genuinely curious. Heads turned toward the voice's source. Elon Musk stood at the edge of the circle, hands casually in the pockets of his simple black suit, his expression one of authentic interest rather than social performance. The room's atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations paused, postures straightened, and attention recalibrated toward the Tesla founder whose presence at the event had been the evening's unspoken status symbol. Michael blinked, momentarily failing to process that Elon Musk, the actual Elon Musk, had directed a question at him. "I'm sorry." "You said your system uses existing building infrastructures," Musk clarified, stepping closer. "Which types? What's the integration method?" His eyes held none of Harrison's condescension, only the sharp, evaluative curiosity that had revolutionized multiple industries. Harrison's smile tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Elon, we were just having a bit of fun. I'm sure we can find more interesting—" "I'm interested in this," Musk replied without looking at Harrison, his focus remaining entirely on Michael. "Urban carbon capture has massive potential if you can solve the efficiency and scale problems." The circle widened instinctively, reconfiguring around its new gravitational center. The Wall Street Journal reporter edged closer. The event photographer angled for a better position. Harrison's expression performed complex calculations, how to maintain his dignity while accommodating Musk's apparent interest in the help. Michael squared his shoulders slightly, years of scientific passion overtaking his momentary humiliation. It targets high-rises primarily, sir. The system uses modified HVAC infrastructure to divert air through algae membrane panels integrated into standard window units. Each unit is essentially a vertical algae farm disguised as tinted glass. Musk nodded, eyes narrowing slightly in thought. The scalability problem has always been distribution and maintenance. How are you handling the biofouling issues in your design? The question was technical, specific, the kind engineers asked each other, not the superficial queries typically directed at servers. Michael's hands gestured as he explained, forgetting momentarily that one still held a serving tray. That's actually where the breakthrough is. The membrane uses a nanostructured hydrophobic coating that prevents biofilm adhesion, self-cleaning, essentially. My professor thought it would reduce efficiency, but our lab tests show minimal impact on gas exchange rates. The room had gone completely silent now. The catering manager, who had been approaching to extract Michael from the uncomfortable situation, hesitated, confused by the shifting power dynamics. Harrison's smile had calcified, his eyes darting between Musk and the gathering observers. "You have lab results?" Musk asked, reaching for his phone. "Mind sharing the numbers?" Michael laughed nervously. "I have them memorized, actually." He recited carbon capture rates, efficiency metrics, and energy consumption figures with the precision of someone who had lived with these calculations daily. Musk typed notes as he listened, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. Harrison cleared his throat. "Elon, I had no idea you were interested in carbon capture technology. My fund actually has a portfolio company." "This is different," Musk said, without looking up from his phone. "The building integration approach solves the land use problem, and if his efficiency numbers are even half accurate, it's worth exploring." He glanced at Michael. "Do you have a prototype?" "In my apartment," Michael admitted, suddenly conscious again of the stark contrast between his position and everyone else's in the room. "It's just a small-scale demo unit, one window panel with the system integrated. Nothing fancy." "But it works?" Musk pressed, his intensity undiminished. "Yes, sir. I've been running tests for 8 months. The data's consistent with the larger application projections." The Singapore investor stepped forward, business card materializing between manicured fingers. "I'd be interested in seeing your materials as well. Chan Venture Partners has a climate tech division." The gesture was like breaking a dam. Suddenly, 3 other investors were offering cards, asking questions, positioning themselves in Musk's conversational orbit while attempting to gauge the server's potential value. The photographer captured the moment with rapid clicks. The WSJ reporter had her phone out, recording. Harrison watched his social capital evaporating in real time. His expression hardened as he assessed the situation, then recalibrated with the adaptability that had made him a billionaire. "Well, this is unexpected," he said with a forced laugh. "Perhaps I was too hasty in my assessment. Though you must admit, ideas from uninvited sources rarely—" "Some of humanity's most transformative ideas came from unexpected sources," Musk interrupted, his voice carrying easily through the now attentive room. "Einstein was a patent clerk when he published his theory of relativity. Great ideas don't care about your resume or your connections." He turned back to Michael. "What's your full name?" "Michael Harrington," he answered, still balancing the tray in one hand while accepting business cards with the other. "Michael Harrington," Musk repeated, committing it to memory. He pocketed his phone and lifted his gaze to address the broader group. "You know what the problem is with most of our innovation ecosystems? They're closed loops. Same schools, same firms, same perspectives circulating. That's how you get incremental improvements instead of breakthroughs. The crowd had expanded beyond the original circle, attendees drawn by the unexpected intensity and Musk's rare display of extended public interaction. Event staff hovered uncertainly, the catering manager signaling desperately for Michael to return to his duties while simultaneously unwilling to interrupt what was unfolding. But real innovation is often orthogonal to established thinking, Musk continued. It comes from people who haven't been told what's impossible. He gestured toward Michael. When I was building my first companies, plenty of established players explained why my ideas wouldn't work. Harrison attempted to reclaim his position. No one's suggesting that innovation can't come from anywhere, Elon. But there's a process, a system for vetting ideas that system, Musk said, turning to face Harrison directly, is increasingly designed to protect incumbents rather than foster breakthroughs. You asked where he's published. I never published academic papers before building rockets that NASA now uses. You asked about his credentials. What credentials did Steve Jobs have when he revolutionized personal computing? His words weren't heated, but matter-of-fact, delivered with the confidence of someone who had repeatedly proven conventional wisdom wrong. The room had transformed. What had begun as an uncomfortable moment of class enforcement had become something else entirely. A master class in innovation philosophy delivered by one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Phones recorded discreetly. Mental notes were taken. Michael stood at the center of attention he'd never sought, watching as Elon Musk systematically dismantled the social barriers designed to keep him in his place. Michael, Musk said, turning back to him, I'd like to see your prototype. Not tonight, obviously, but soon. Can you come to my office next week? Bring your data, designs, everything you've got. He pulled out his own business card, something attendees knew he rarely did, and handed it to the young waiter. Email my assistant at this address. She'll set it up. Michael stared at the card, the moment surreal. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And don't worry about patents yet, Musk added. My legal team can help navigate that once we evaluate the technology. He glanced around the gathering. Unless someone here wants to make a preemptive offer. The question hung in the air, both invitation and challenge. Several investors shifted uncomfortably, caught between opportunity and embarrassment. The Singapore investor stepped forward again. I'd be interested in continuing the conversation tonight, if you're available after your shift, Mr. Harrington. The catering manager finally found her voice. Mr. Harrington is actually scheduled until midnight, but perhaps we could arrange. He's done for the night, Musk stated simply. I'll cover whatever he would have earned, plus a premium for the establishment's flexibility. He looked directly at Michael. Unless you'd prefer to finish your shift? Michael carefully set down his tray on a nearby table, removing his serving gloves with deliberate movements that helped mask his trembling hands. I appreciate the opportunity, sir. He turned to his manager, whose expression had transformed from concern to something approaching awe. Is that all right, Miss Peterson? She nodded quickly. Of course. We'll handle the coverage. The subtext was clear. When Elon Musk makes a request, the answer is yes. Michael removed his bow tie and tucked it into his pocket, a small gesture of transition from server to potential entrepreneur that wasn't lost on anyone watching. Around him, the room had reconfigured. Those who had laughed at Harrison's jokes minutes earlier were now positioning themselves for introductions, business cards discreetly at the ready. Harrison himself had executed a strategic retreat, engaged in animated conversation with Richard by the bar, both men studiously appearing unbothered by the development. Their body language betrayed the truth, shoulders too straight, gestures too emphatic, laughter slightly too loud. I should warn you, Michael said to Musk as they moved toward a quieter corner of the penthouse, the Singapore investor and two others following at a respectful distance. "I've only completed 2 years of my engineering degree. Tesla employs plenty of people without finished degrees," Musk replied with a slight shrug. "Including me. I left my PhD program after 2 days. Education is important, but what matters is your ability to solve problems and execute." The Wall Street Journal reporter approached cautiously, recorder in hand. "Mr. Musk, Jessica Chen from the Journal. Would you care to comment on what attracted you to Mr. Harrington's concept?" Musk considered briefly. "The buildings themselves become carbon capture systems. That's the insight that matters. Using existing structures rather than dedicating new land. If his efficiency numbers hold at scale, it could be significant." He glanced at Michael. "I make no promises about investment yet. The technology needs proper evaluation, but the approach is innovative." As they settled into a conversation about technical details, other attendees watched the transformation occurring before them. The event photographers captured images that would circulate through financial and tech circles by morning. The waiter who'd caught Elon Musk's attention, the moment innovation transcended social boundaries. At the bar, Harrison's forced smile had become increasingly strained. "The kid got lucky," he muttered to Richard. "Musk loves his contrarian image. This is just another performance." Richard sipped his drink thoughtfully. "Maybe, but he seemed genuinely interested in the technology." "Please," Harrison scoffed, "how revolutionary could it be? If there were a breakthrough in carbon capture coming from City College, we'd have heard about it." "Would we?" Richard asked, watching as Michael pulled up diagrams on a borrowed tablet, Musk leaning forward with focused attention. "Or would we dismiss it because it didn't come through established channels?" The evening continued with a subtle but unmistakable reordering of the room's social hierarchy. Michael's fellow servers glanced at him with expressions ranging from confusion to pride as they continued their duties. The catering manager had already texted her boss about the extraordinary development, the kind of story that would become company legend. By midnight, Michael had scheduled meetings with 3 serious investors, exchanged contact information with a patent attorney who offered pro bono services to get started, and made plans to visit Musk's offices the following Tuesday. His life had irreversibly changed in the span of an evening. As the event wound down, Michael found himself alone with Musk for a moment near the coat check. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Musk. Not just for the interest in my work, but for—" He struggled to articulate the deeper gratitude. "For treating your ideas with respect," Musk finished for him. "Look, I grew up in South Africa with limited resources. I understand what it's like when people dismiss you based on background rather than substance." He retrieved his phone and checked a message before continuing. "The investors who matter evaluate ideas on merit. The others are just playing social games with money." Michael nodded, absorbing the wisdom. "I won't waste this opportunity." "Don't think of it that way," Musk replied, pocketing his phone. "Just build something that works." He extended his hand, and Michael shook it, no longer server and guest, but 2 engineers discussing possibility. As they parted ways at the elevator, the night's lesson hung in the air, unspoken but profound. In true innovation, ideas matter more than credentials, and the next world-changing concept could come from anywhere, even from the person refilling your water glass.